Hello, everybody, and welcome to another bite-sized branding show shooting this afternoon. As always, I'd like to welcome my right-hand man, Grant Tom. Thank you very much for joining us. Are you even on my right hand? I guess depends which way the camera goes. And our awesome guest today, Mark Van. I'm not even going to try your last name. I should have asked you before the show. How do you pronounce your last name?
Van Rijmenam.
Yeah, thank God I didn't ask, because there's no way I would have been able to get that. Mate, it's an absolute pleasure having you on the show. For everyone who doesn't know you, I don't know what the hell you're doing on the internet. You got to check this guy out. He's a digital speaker, future tech, future talk, all about new technology and keeping everyone informed in what's happening in those tech spaces and what the future is going to bring. Thank you, Mark, so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Man,
Thanks for having me.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm very excited to get you on the show. We even talked about you on the last show, just prepping people, because we're like, we're going to have this guy. He's going to talk about AI. It's going to be incredible. Before we kick off into things, how about I throw it to you and you give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you do as a digital speaker. And then I'll kick it over to Grant after that to give everyone an idea of how the show's going to roll today.
Sounds good. So thank you very much for having me. I'm a strategic futurist, which means that I think about emerging technologies and how they change organizations and society. I'm also known as the digital speaker, so I'm delivering keynotes all around the world for over a decade on these topics to help large organizations, Fortune 500 companies, understand these topics. I've written 5 books. My 4th book was on the Metaverse, called Step into the Metaverse, and my 5th book was written with ChatGPT in 5 days, called Future Visions, which was an awesome experiment. And I also run a media platform called Dataflock, which is a publication around emerging tech. And I've just started a new research institute focused on ensuring a thriving digital future for everyone, focused on elevating the world's digital awareness, because I'm not necessarily convinced that we'll end up in the right digital future, and I want to do whatever I can to make that happen.
The fact that we got time with you today is remarkable. How many businesses do you have? 7 businesses? 5 books?
Enough.
Thank God for ChatGPT. You would have never got that 5th book out. Can I ask you something before we move on? When you wrote that book with ChatGPT, how good was it on the first take? Like, did you kind of look at it and go, "Damn, this guy got it," or were you kind of like,
Yeah, at first, yes, I thought this is pretty darn good. But then the more I went into it, so the book is about 150 pages. So the more I went into it, the more I started to see patterns. That it basically replaced one technology for the other and basically said the same thing. And I also started to see mistakes. At some point it said, I asked how did robotics and AI converge, and it said, well, in the 1980s, robotics and AI converged to create self-driving cars. Which is kind of interesting if you think about it. If only that had happened, I think transportation would have been in a much better shape today than it is at the moment. We wouldn't have all those traffic jams here in Sydney. But other than that,
definitely.
If I have to compare it with my other books, which I wrote myself, I think it's the quality is definitely less. It's a lot more superficial. It's a lot less flat. My other books they go more up, have more ups and downs, more storytelling. So there's still work for authors, fortunately.
Yeah. Man, I think I exposed a little bit of the first question in that. But before we get there, Grant, my friend, tell everyone how the show's going to roll today.
Well, Bernard, thanks very much, and welcome, Mark. I'm known as Grant Tom, and I'm known as the headfire starter of the marketing and advertising industry. What it means is that for 35 years, I have grown and created businesses and business values and brand values especially. But what I really love today is that we've got a magic key in the sense that we're going to unlock Mark's knowledge in the sense of where we are going as to how our world is going to be changed and pivot and how we're going to be implementing this into our business. So I cannot wait to get started, Mark. We've got some dynamic questions to ask you. I know you've got some dynamic answers to give us, but there's a little bit of a trick. On the show, we are made out of 5-minute segments, but because we've got a guest, we're going to make it 2 extra minutes. So we've got 7 minutes. You've got a clock down, a clock that counts down, and what you need to do is just watch that clock and make sure you give us all the value, because of course, Bernard and I will interrupt you as well, just to make sure we get all the extra dynamic wisdom out of your brain in segments. So let's get the show started there, Bernard.
Awesome. Are you ready to go, Mark?
I'm ready to go.
That's
Let's
it.
do this.
It's all about speed, man. It's all about speed. So, the first question I do have is all about AI, and we kind of jumped in there a little bit because I'm just so interested around this arena. We were having a conversation earlier, and I'd like to dive into that a little bit deeper around what is true AI. I feel that most AI these days is just smart databasing. It's just a database picking and matching things. Let's dig a little bit deeper into what true AI is and how that can actually apply in the real world. I'll hit the timer. There we go. Look at that.
All right, sounds good. Well, it's a very good question, a very broad question, but I think also a very important question because a lot of people think that there's a lot of talks about reaching artificial general intelligence, AI that is as intelligent as human beings. And well, I have no doubts that at some point in time in the future this will happen. When this will happen, I think it's still quite a few years away. We only have to look at ChatGPT. ChatGPT, people think this is a really awesome technology, and yes, it is awesome technology. As I said, I wrote my 5th book with it, which I think is pretty remarkable, and you can do all kinds of cool things with this generative AI. However, in the end, ChatGPT is just statistical analysis and pattern recognition, although in a very, very advanced format. Nothing more, nothing that. It's not pure intelligence. It's not.
Yeah. So it's not really learning. Yeah.
It's not learning. It's literally given the context of word A. In this particular context, the person who you are, like many, many, many different variables. It is most likely that word C will follow. Followed by word D, and that's what it is. It's actually quite interesting because I was reading an article, I think it was in New York Times or New York Post, where a journalist was using ChatGPT in Bing and was really test driving it, and the ChatGPT was all giving all kinds of weird things, giving back. That he loved the journalist, and he said it many, many times, but he also said all kinds of weird stuff. And to me, actually, that's is a reflection of what's out there online. So whatever we get back from ChatGPT, you could argue, is sort of a mirror into our collective intelligence or our collective consciousness. And I don't think it's something to be very proud of if we see what we get back from ChatGPT, because ChatGPT has basically, collected all there is in the internet, I think up until 2021 on the internet, and uses that to give us, feedback, or to give us, have this dialogue. But it's not coming up with anything new, It's yes. As I said, it's pattern recognition, statistical analysis, and that's what it does. So you could argue, we're looking into this really big mirror of our collective consciousness, and I don't think that's something to be proud of. What we get back sometimes, often, of course, there's, it does really cool things, and it's really helpful. But you can also easily trick it. You can get this alter ego called Sydney. When you talk about Bing, and I think on ChatGPT itself, it's called, I think, Dan. Where you get this alter ego, and then you get all kinds of you can basically ask it anything, so all the security barriers are disappearing, and I'm sure they have solved that by now, at least I hope so. But it's that's what it is. It's very, very good. It's a very, very advanced tool, because in order to be able to do that and sift through billions and billions of documents in such a short time frame and able to give that answer back is truly remarkable. But it's not truly artificial intelligence. It's not creativity. It's not coming something new. And I think we should really make that distinction. Just to, first of all, that we shouldn't be afraid of it, because it's not artificial general intelligence. It's not as smart as we are. And I think that's really important to take into consideration. Now, of course, eventually, I think AI will get better. And also with the launch of quantum computing, which is getting better, and once these two technologies are truly converging, I think we'll have a much better chance to reach this artificial general intelligence, which I'm convinced we will reach at some point in time. And of course, that's when the whole world will change, when we have AI that is truly intelligent. Is
Wilson kind of the only true AI example, or is it still just using algorithms and processing? You know how it was the chess playing robot. You know how it learned how to play chess better and better and better? Is it called Wilson? Is that the right name?
No, it's not Wilson. It's
a W name, right?
I forgot it, but it's Watson.
Watson, that's right.
Watson, that's from the 1990s, and that's That's just basically brute force computation. That's just be able
Okay.
to have a lot of data and be able to compute. When we had AlphaGo or Go in 2016 and AlphaGo in 2017, that was actually more interesting because that for the first time, brute force computation didn't work anymore because you have there are more moves in the game of Go than there are atoms in the known universe. So brute force computation didn't work anymore. So they had to use some kind of intuition to make that happen. But I read an article about a week ago, so that there's an amateur Go player who now has beaten AlphaGo. So because it figured out that there's some simple mistakes it made, and it used to it used those simple mistakes to easily beat it. So
Yes.
there it sort of shows you that yes, it's advanced technology, but it's definitely not it's not the holy grail. And I think
Did it
that's
learn
something
from
very
that mistake though? Did it learn from that mistake and did it improve in future games, or
I
is
would
it just...
argue that they will use that kind of information to fix it. You can see it's like a
Yeah,
bug.
but it's not
You find
learning it.
no, it's
But
not
it's
learning
not
it.
learning it. No. Like us, like you trip over, and then the next time you go, oh, that rock there, I don't
Yeah.
trip over that rock tomorrow because I tripped over it today. It's not doing
Yeah.
that. It still
No,
takes somebody in the background and go, oh crap, there was a rock there. Be careful of rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Well, of course you have learning. You have supervised, unsupervised learning. And you have different other ones. You have transfer learning. So it can learn obviously because it's machine learning. But it's still not intelligence. I think
Yeah.
that's
But Mark,
important
it's
to
not
be
the
aware.
learning that's going to give it that intelligence for eventually that it can think for itself.
Well, it could be because it has more and more access to data, and then so it will learn better and better. But at the moment, it's very difficult for it to take the learning from one algorithm and move it over
Yeah.
to another algorithm. So
It doesn't acknowledge that this experience here is attached to all future experiences, and this is how it applies.
Yeah. For example,
Yeah.
and I think that is, we are these technologies are being developed. Transfer learning and reinforcement learning. It's very important technology, but it's not something that is will allow us today to have artificial general intelligence.
Yeah.
The more we everything that we do today plays a very, very important role on our road towards artificial general intelligence, and these are the building blocks for a future artificial general intelligence. But it's not that we are already there, that we already have truly artificial intelligence.
So then, based on that, is it a bit of a misnomer how people are using the term AI? Is that kind of misleading?
Well, I don't know. That's what we've came up with. So we have to live with it.
It's the best we have, so we'll just keep it.
Yeah.
But is it not, Mark? I know our time is up, but Bernard, I think we needed 20-minute segments here because it was so intense information going on. But with this AI, right? It can't really predict the future. It just gives you a law of averages in the sense of the data that it can gather. Is that correct?
Well, it just looks on the data that it has. It's not going to create out of the blue news.
Can't predict. It just takes the law of averages.
Well, it can predict based on the data that it has, but it can't predict out of the blue. If you have an algorithm that doesn't have any data, that has not been trained on anything, that will not be able to predict anything because it doesn't have the data to make that base that predictions on.
And it doesn't seem to be able to figure out how to gather it either. Like from some basic searches I've done, like you said, it gives you that superficial top level, but it can't figure out how to tie in other seemingly anecdotal things to then make a use case.
Yeah, that's a matter of time, I think.
Yeah.
I think
so interesting. So when do you think the robots will take over? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, there's already Boston Dynamic anyway, so that's you can get your pet from Boston Dynamic.
I'll just get a real animal, mate. I'll just like, what is this?
No vet bills. No vet bills.
It's true, but how much does the animal cost you in the start?
Well, it'll outlive you and then be able to represent you when you die.
Absolutely.
Great.
It's going to be good fun.
I can't wait. Awesome. That's enough AI talk and robotics for now. We have another topic. It's something that a lot of people keep swinging into conversation, a bit like AI these days. But if anyone wants to kind of excuse doing something or make a reason to do something, they do it in the metaverse. And it's such a blanket term, I think, right now that people are just throwing around because it's exciting and it's new and it's something different. I think what would be great is to get a little bit more insight on what the metaverse is, and then how can brands or businesses take advantage of the metaverse for, to access or create a new channel for their business. Let me hit this little baby here.
I'm excited for this one.
There we go.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, happy to share a bit about the metaverse. So I published my book "Step into the Metaverse" last year, and I was about a half year after Facebook announced Meta. And it's for my book I interviewed about 100 stakeholders building the metaverse, as well as another 150 surveys. And what I got back from those 250 interviews and surveys is that I had 250 different definitions of what the metaverse is. Sort of shows you how difficult it is for people to understand what on earth we're talking about. For me, the metaverse is very simple. It's the next iteration of the internet. It's the immersive internet, where we move from a 2D internet to a 3D internet, where the physical moves into the digital and the digital moves into the physical.
Right.
And that's it. So it's for me, I think that's a very straightforward definition. But there's a lot to it. So we move from the physical into the digital. You could argue that what we're doing at the moment is already part of the metaverse, because I'm physically in one part of Sydney, you are physically in another part of Sydney, and we are connecting and meeting here digitally. So that you could argue that's sort of a first very version 0.1 of the metaverse. But it is also what I also see as a big important part of the metaverse is digital twins. Where we create a digital replica of a physical asset or a system or a system of systems that will then allow us to interact with that physical asset in the digital world, and then we can either just monitor it, or we can actually interact with it, where we can make changes in the digital world, which are then reflected in the physical world, and we can access it through our smartphone, our smartwatch, our computer, our tablet, or an augmented reality or a virtual reality device. The other one is where the digital moves into the physical, which I think is going to be a lot more interesting, because basically that's the augmented reality layer, where we can add an infinite layers on top of the physical reality, and these layers, they can be for fun and entertainment. Pokemon Go a couple of years ago is of course the first where the world got to know augmented reality. But nowadays you can have a lot more advanced, augmented reality. We can have a purple flying dragon above the Sydney Opera House, and you can only see it with your with your smartphone, or later on in the future with smart AR glasses. Or we can use it in a factory where we need to fix a machine, and I don't know how the machine works, and there's no mechanic there. But then I have augmented reality glasses, which tells me exactly which wire to cut and which screw to tighten. So from that perspective, I think that's really, really useful. And when we have these physical and the digital worlds converge, I think that's where we get this this immersive internet, where this 3D internet, where the internet will become as pervasive as the air we breathe. We'll move from having to make a conscious decision to go on the internet to being in the internet. And I think that's a massive difference, where we are fully integrated with the internet. And if you look at it from that perspective, the moment we are fully integrated in the internet, you will of course also see there's tons of opportunities for brands to take a different approach, to offer a new, truly engaging experience. And I think what you see happening at the moment, you see a lot of people working with NFTs, non-fungible tokens, or in the platforms like Roblox or Minecraft or Fortnite, which people think is the metaverse. It's that's again, it's part of a very early stage of the metaverse, but I wouldn't argue that it is the metaverse. Just like Web3 is not the metaverse, or gaming is not the metaverse, or virtual reality is not the metaverse. However, all these things can be part of the metaverse, though it doesn't have to be. I think that's important to be aware of. And so if we look at it to answer your second part of the question, how can brands benefit from this? I think we should look at it from this opportunity, the internet of opportunity, because all of a sudden you can have this interaction with your consumer, which you didn't have before. A great example is Walt Disney, where they created this app where they literally brought a show into your living room, where you had augmented reality flowing away from your TV into your living room to create this truly unique experience. So the metaverse offers brands to deliver an experience for their customers that will drive customer loyalty. and I think that's really important to be aware of. Another example, if we have this what I call immersive commerce, immersive shopping in the metaverse, that can be multiple folds. That means it can be buying clothes for your avatar, because also our avatars are born naked, so we need to dress our avatars. And so we can sell, as a fashion brand, we can sell digital fashion items, but we can then also sell those digital fashion items as physical fashion items, so that I and my avatar can wear the same clothes, which
that's kind of cool.
Generation Z and Generation Alpha I think is really, really important and very, very cool. So it's a completely different perspective, and if you look at as a brand, how can you start with the metaverse, then I would argue we'll have a look at the platforms such as Roblox, such as Fortnite, such as Decentraland, and any of the hundreds other platforms that are out there where Generation Z is, where Generation Alpha is, to understand how they are behaving and how they are building a community, how they are interacting with each other, so that you as a brand, you can become part of that, and you can learn and you can understand what they think is important, and you can then create this unique experience, so that you can have them become familiar with your brand, which is an important thing to do, of course, for marketers.
So basically, like, you're getting this opportunity where people are buying real estate in another dimension that's not even a part of this earth, which is part of that whole metaverse, like second dimension, in the sense of where there's another activity taking place that you can't go to, but you can actually own and merchandise it. Is that correct?
That is correct. Though I must say that I think buying digital real estate for millions of dollars is utter nonsense. But that's that's a side story, because I don't believe. I think it's something of the current metaverse. It doesn't make sense to have artificial scarcity in a grid-like pattern in a digital world where the laws of physics do not apply. So it's very, very limited thinking, and I think if we want to, as a brand, if you truly want to benefit from the metaverse, you should throw away everything that have a blank canvas, a blank 3D canvas, and start from there, and truly think out of the box and truly think creative.
There is an interesting application, which I know. I just I had to listen to him. I couldn't interrupt. I was like, this is too interesting to stop. I just want to just a couple of examples to see if this fits in with the mantra. There was an application that I had access to a couple of years ago, where basically it was a digital space that you could walk around, essentially, and then you could find products within that digital space. And then you could then pick up the product and see it. And then using your phone, using augmented reality, you could then see it in physical space, how it would be in physical space. The next iteration of that would then be you could actually try it on. So you would then have it through your phone, through a reflection. You could then see yourself and then, place the item on yourself. And then obviously purchase it if you wanted to purchase it. That's a place where it goes in and out of that digital metaverse, right? You go into a space to look at for an object, and then you take that object out of the space to see what it looks like on, and then based on that you can then purchase the item. And then in the future, maybe they do mirrors at home that you could just have a look in the mirror and then select the items you want and change everything and send it off to be purchased.
Absolutely. I think that's the future. I think
I think that's the future.
I think another one, a good use case that kind of came out of what you were saying is, especially with international property, you're able to buy property anywhere in the world, a lot more accessible now than I think ever before. And what if you do want to repaint it, or what if there is something damaged? There's no real way to kind of monitor until somebody goes and shows up there and takes photos of the place. If there was a digital representation of your place on a platform that you could then go in and have a look at it, and if you're like, you know what, the paint's looking a bit old, I think I want to repaint it, I want to repaint it purple, you could then apply the purple in the application, have a look at it, and then say, yep, that's the color I want, boom, and then off it goes to an order, and then somebody goes in there and paints up your property.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's something that's a simple use case.
Yeah, simple. Please, that was genius just then. Come on.
I think what you mentioned about Walt Disney, in the sense of doing an activity in your living room, stops that whole dimension of you having to get onto a plane, to get a ticket to go to a park, to have an activity, where the brand is now coming into your environment at your choice, at your time. And I think that's about the journey that brands can take, and the interaction, and another dimension, another revenue stream that can be created with the view of just getting your touch point of your brand enhanced. So I think that was a great example, number one. Number
Yeah.
two, you really got me excited because I've now decided on a side hustle. I'm going to get my Google glasses. I'm going to do heart operations on the weekend here, just because it's going to explain everything to me, and I'm going to do some heart operations as a side hustle, and it's a great way to go. So you've got to be very excited.
Brain surgery by augmented reality. Yeah. This guy's doing lobotomies in his backyard. Actually, there was another app. I don't know if you ever saw this app. It was on Samsung's a long, long time ago called Leia. And it used to apply all the locations on like in front of you. So if you're looking down a street, you're like, where is this damn restaurant? And your GPS doesn't always work. You would just face it down the street and it would then recognize the street and then pinpoint all the locations. I don't know why they stopped that app. If they integrated it into the Maps app, it was fantastic. I used to sometimes you get lost and you just be like, where? Oh, it's just over there. It's down the street over that way. Got it.
Yeah, I remember the app. It's a Dutch app, which did very, very well for quite a few years, and then got bought up by a big company and then just disappeared.
And they killed it.
Yes. So there was another app where, like an airline company, you just have to take your phone and in the sky, and you can look for vouchers in the sky, and then you can claim your vouchers, and it's all part of travel and destinations, and you just can search for vouchers. And I just think, that's incredible.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
That's where they could integrate like the Maps function with actual situational applications. Like if you took Leia and then applied coupons to it, like gift vouchers or something like that, as you walk down the street, it would then say this restaurant has a little coupon. You'd be like, oh, cool, I'll just grab that little guy and go in there instead.
Yeah, though I don't think it would be very good for to walk through the street with your phone,
phone like this in front of your face. No, why not?
I wouldn't recommend that.
Mate, we walk around the street with a phone in front of our face, talking to somebody.
Yeah, we do it.
When there's
we
somebody
do it
right
anyway
next
already.
to us.
So might as well hold it in front of our face.
Yeah. Just walk around. What do you need Google Glass for? Just hold your phone up like this and just walk around, man. There's only like a millisecond lag between anything that happens, anyway. You just see people bumping into people everywhere they go.
Yeah.
Cool. Last question. We're ripping through this. We are ripping through this. Blockchain. Blockchain was I think a huge buzzword and topic a couple of years ago, and now it's the term I feel like has kind of disappeared, faded into the background a little bit. But obviously, blockchain is a technology that sits behind a lot of technology that we don't even see from a day-to-day basis. We don't even assume to know where it is being applied currently. Where do you see the future of blockchain leading? Essentially, what is the next big hurrah for blockchain? I'll hit this little baby. There we go.
Sure. So, blockchain is infrastructure layer. Blockchain, Web3, it's infrastructure layer for the next iteration of the internet. And I actually think the fact that there is a bit of silence around blockchain is not necessarily bad, because it means that the developers who are developing this technology have all the chance and time to do so, because it's important work that needs to be done. And I think that the blockchain has a very, very big role to play in the future, especially when we talk about the metaverse. Where I hope that we're moving to a world where a metaverse, which is an open metaverse, where we have full control over our own data, where we have full control over our own digital identity and of our digital assets, and that's only possible with the distributed ledger technology or blockchain. And because that will allow us to have full control over our data. We decide who gets access to our data. It allows us to have NFTs or cryptocurrency, to have control over our digital assets, and hopefully have a self-sovereign identity where we have full control of our own identity, and we're no longer dependent on someone else who holds our identity and can cut us off at any moment in time. And I think, in an internet where we'll create 1,000 times or 100 times more data than we do today, I think those three concepts are really, really important. If we want to live in a world where we are not being controlled by big tech. And I mentioned at the start that I'm building a research institute focused on elevating the world's digital awareness, and I think that's one of the things is really important. That we need to make people aware that we should move away from big tech, that we should have more control over our own digital lives, that we should not have the Zuckerbergs of this world decide what to do and what happens. I'll give you a good example. When Facebook launched Meta in October 21, a couple of days later, there was an Australian artist who has been on Instagram for since the beginning with the username Metaverse, and like within a couple of days after that, her entire account that she had used for from the beginning, with all her work, everything she did was just gone, just deleted, and she could not reach out to Facebook or Meta or Instagram about what happened. Only when she reached out to, I think, New York Post and New York Times, and they reached out to Facebook, they said, "Oh, we're so sorry, it happened by accident." We all know that it's utter bullshit,
Yes.
and I think that is really, really problematic. That we can have this one single person who has all control of our lives, and I think we need to move away from that. We need to have full control of our own data, assets, and identity, and that's where blockchain plays a vital role. Now, obviously, if we move to the metaverse, if we build this next iteration of the immersive internet, we don't need blockchain technology. It means we can build the virtual realities and the augmented reality experiences already today. And we don't need distributed ledger technology. It just means that we'll end up in a world that's owned and controlled by big tech. If we don't want that, and I think we shouldn't want that, then we need blockchain technology, and we need to have these assets from a consumer perspective, to have that control. Now, from an enterprise perspective, there's a lot of benefits in using blockchain. Blockchain is the golden standard for supply chains, where we can get rid of all the paper stacks that we need when we transact, when we have our global supply chains, and we can make it a lot more efficient and effective. But that's more private networks. These are not public decentralized networks. These are private networks with between 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 companies, or how many you want to bring together. But even there, it shows you that if you move to a state with blockchain, no single company has control. You have data that you can trust, and that ties it very nicely back into our first question, because if we want to have AI, we want to use data that we can trust. So we want to have data that we can that's trustworthy, that's unbiased. So if we want to build AI systems, train AI systems, if we have data from a blockchain, we know that we can trust that data that can be very useful as a sort of oracle or sort of a system to feed into the algorithm to give us answers. So in my opinion, blockchain is the future. Do we need blockchain for the future? No, we don't. But I think we'll end up in a pretty darn bad situation if we don't build a society that's built on blockchain.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, go ahead, Bjorn.
Yeah, but is it not about the authentication of the transaction that is so important, why business needs to pivot? And if they were to pivot in this direction, what do they need to be doing right now to prepare to implement?
Well, it very much depends on what your use case is. If your use case is streamlining your supply chain, it's very much important that the smart contracts that you use to have to monitor and to enable the transactions between the different parties within the supply chain, that these are stored on the blockchain, so you can trust that. So I mean that's what the blockchain offers. The blockchain offers trust without an intermediary, because in today's world, we can, with the three of us, can create a mini supply chain, and we might not trust each other, so we use a notary to organize all the contracts between us. That's very cumbersome, very expensive, takes a lot of time. If we use a smart contract, that can be done in minutes, and we can get to business without all the need of notaries in the middle or lawyers to do that for us. So from a supply chain perspective, where we transact goods from one end of the world to the other end of the world, with people that we might have difficulties understanding, from language barriers, if we can shift to code, to smart contracts that everyone can understand, it becomes a lot easier to have that interaction, and to get rid of all the paper, which is prone for error, and we can move to a system that we can trust.
But how does the infrastructure work then? Like, wouldn't there at some point, if essentially it becomes like a digital passport, right, where all your information is kind of hosted in this individual ledger of sorts, and then you can transact that ledger with whoever needs certain parts of that information? Does that mean I host and they then also host a piece of this information? Like, where does the actual information sit?
Well, that very much depends on the use case again. But
Yeah.
if you have, let's take decentralized storage. Decentralized storage is literally stored decentralized on thousands or millions of computers, where each device each has a bit of the data, and we can be able to combine that. But then we have millions of copies across all the devices. So if you cut out one server, it doesn't mean that we don't have access anymore. It's a bit like if you want to rob a bank in today's world, it's very easy. You have to rob one bank. But if in a decentralized world, if you want to rob a bank, you have to rob a million banks at the same time, steal the same thing, and still go unnoticed, which is nearly impossible.
Easy.
It's not impossible.
Easy.
It's nearly. It's highly improbable.
But then I gotta get my fathom this, right? But doesn't that mean like if I'm dealing with 10,000 people, does that mean I need to have enough storage to host 10,000 ledgers in order to keep my part of the chain?
No, because you have these. No, they have the blockchains that are being developed, from Ethereum to the Bitcoin blockchain to Solana, Polkadot, and any of the dozens of other blockchains that are being developed. That they take care of that. So you use a blockchain, and they, if you build an application on top of that, without going into too many technical details at the moment, they take care of that. So you don't have to worry about that.
But is their storage decentralized?
That's the
okay.
whole point.
So their storage is because I'm thinking like, hold on a second, wait a second. If they just use a storage facility out back, but the process is decentralized, I'm like, hold on,
that happens when you use a blockchain as a service, for example, on AWS, where you can easily spin up a blockchain, but I wouldn't argue that's decentralized, because it's still run and controlled by AWS, and they probably own, or at least host, the private keys to access that. And as we've seen with all the the FTX bankruptcies and criminal acts, if you don't host your own private keys, you don't own it. And I think that's very much applicable here.
Wow.
Well, that's where we're heading, isn't it? That infrastructure is going to continue to grow, and that's another business in another dimension that's going to start evolving, touching us. Security aspects of that, we don't want to have people fronting something that they're not. So it's just another dimension again of everything that's going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much to it. We can easily talk for days about this topic.
I feel like we need to do another one. We should do a follow-up show to this show. This needs a part 2 with Mark.
Happy to do so.
Mate, an absolute pleasure. That was just like a bullet train right now. There's so much information on these tracks, and it just went so quickly. And I think every subject we could have gone on for a good half an hour. It was fantastic.
Yeah, the funny thing is, because I always listen to my podcast at 2 times the speed, because I think people talk slow and I like to listen fast. So I just talk fast. So so you don't have to listen at 2 times the speed.
You don't have to speed it up. Mate, thank you so much for joining us, Grant. Man, I'll chuck it to you. Do you want to do a wrap of the show? Or not?
Well, first of all, like I always say, is that, in the beginning of the show, I mentioned that we had a magic key. We sure use that magic key today just to unlock the essentials of where we are heading. We've got an edutainment variety of show. You've got to watch the show again, in the sense of what we unbundled, what we're going through, in the sense of the AI, the meta, and the blockchain. And we just touched on it. The one thing that you've got to realize is that when you've got your brand and your intellectual property, there's no way that you're going to be able to protect it except for building a brand. And the only way you can build a brand is by using AI, meta, and blockchain. So therefore, think about your business and think about how you implement your intellectual property, because it's going to be the only way that you're going to be able to protect it. So Mark, once again, phenomenal show. I wait for part 2 of Mark, and I'll come with more questions, that's for sure.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that's definitely got to happen. Guys, thank you very much, everyone who's listening in. Please like, comment, share. If you have any feedback or questions, please send them through, and we'll make sure they get through to Mark if we can't answer them ourselves. And I get a feeling like there'll be some questions we definitely can't answer. If you have any guests or controversial concepts that you would like us to unbundle on the show, please send them through. Until the next show, thank you very much, Mark, for joining us. Grant, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And we'll catch you at the next show. Thank you, everybody.